Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first webinar of autumn 2025. And this evening, we have decided to host a webinar in conjunction with AHDB as part of the GB Calf Strategy Week. And tonight we've got Hacilian from AHDB. She is a veterinary surgeon with a BSc in agriculture as well. She has plenty of previous experience working as a farm vet in general practice and in the pharmaceutical industry. So she's got lots of knowledge to share with us this evening. She works at AHDB on various different projects within the ruminant sector, including medicines and calf welfare. She has a strong interest in One Health and also the links that plays between humans, animals, and the environment. So I think without further ado, I will hand over to her to give the presentation. And what I forgot to ask you is, are you happy for people to ask questions as we go through, or would you prefer questions all at the end?
I prefer them all at the end, but I am really keen to have a good conversation with people. So if you could hold on to your questions and then we can have a really good chat at the end, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So if you think of a question, you think you're going to forget it, you can always type it in the chat, and then we can come back to it afterwards. But yeah, do think of those questions as we're going through. So over to you.
Great, thanks, Katie. It's great to be here this evening. Thank you all for coming along. So today I'm going to talk about the GB Calf Strategy, which was launched on Wednesday. So it's very fresh, and it has been made in conjunction with the NFU, Innovation for Agriculture and Ruminant Health and Welfare, as well as AHDB, alongside a whole host of other industry key players. So I'll just move on to the next slide. So very briefly, what we'll cover this evening is a bit of background looking at the previous strategy, which was particularly about dairy calves, and then what has led to the creation of this new strategy. I'll go into the different actions of the three parts of the strategy, why it's applicable to you as farmers, and the next steps. So the GB Dairy Calf Strategy ran from 2020 to 2023, and it really was introduced because of reputational risk in the industry around an expose about dairy bull calf euthanasia, and also at the time that the live export ban was coming in. So various industry bodies and charities and welfare groups had been pushing for improvements in dairy calf welfare for some time, but AHDB and the NFU came together in 2020 and got this strategy off the ground, and really trying to show consumers and the industry that this is something that we can tackle. There were lots of different parts of that strategy, and it achieved a lot. So earlier this year in January, a progress report was published. So if you want to read more, I've put the link at the top of the screen. But in summary, we've seen a really big shift in the industry. So those dairy bull calf registrations have decreased. We've got the corresponding increase in the cross calves, and then a really great achievement with dairy beef making up 37% of prime age beef. And it's something that consumers have actually got confidence in, and it's an expanding area of the market. So part of how this was achieved is through various different means. A really big part of this shift is through the use of sexed semen. So the UK is the leader in the world in the use of sexed semen in the dairy herd. And part of that shift, we were already on that trajectory, but Red Tractor stepped in and made it a part of their standards that dairy farmers were not allowed to undertake routine euthanasia of calves, and they had to have other breeding strategies in place. So that's how the popularity of sexed semen really picked up. Other areas that the strategy really impacted in were with TB policy. So they opened up access to approved finishing units and isolation units, meaning that farms which had TB breakdowns had access to places that they could move those calves to, and it meant that they could get some value during shutdowns and outbreaks. Integrated schemes really took off as well in this period. So there were some already beginning, and really what happened was a big kind of information campaign with the NFU publishing a guide to the different integrated schemes and educating farmers on what options were available for them. And this was all really only possible due to the collaboration across the industry, so between dairy and beef, with retailers, vets, breeding companies, advisors, industry bodies, everyone coming together. And actually a new group was formed through the strategy called Calf Action Network, which is all about improving research in calf welfare by bringing together farmers, vets, advisors and researchers. And they've actually been really fundamental in the new strategy. But I'll just show you a couple of graphs to illustrate if you're a bit more of a visual person. So this just shows that huge increase in sex semen that we have in the UK. And this is predominantly with dairy farmers putting their best performing cows to sex semen to get replacement heifers. And we've got 84% of all dairy semen that's sold to dairy farms is sexed. And then over 50% is beef. So the rest of the herd are being put to beef sires. And we're actually far ahead of even the US with those sales. And then this graph just demonstrates how that has led to this decrease in the purebred dairy bull calves and a big track up increase in the dairy beef cross calves. So people didn't just wash their hands of it after 2023, didn't just say, oh, that's it, we solved the problem. The industry knew that there were still challenges. So conversations began about things that could continue to be improved. So we have seen a really fantastic reduction in calf mortality up to 1 month of age in registered calves on farm. It's great progress, but there is more to do. There is a difference between the survival rates of dairy bull calves and dairy female calves and dairy beef cross calves. So what we want to do is close that gap and make sure that all calves have got the same opportunity to start in life. There's been a slight increase in the slaughter of calves under 4 months of age, and this isn't necessarily a key challenge, but it's something to be aware of because consumers obviously are not keen on young calves going to slaughter, and there are risks of transporting young calves for their welfare. Mixing calves at market is obviously a big risk for diseases, and especially if they're going through multiple different units. And then a few other things to touch on. So carbon footprints, obviously under scrutiny. Environmental sustainability is top of everyone's agenda at the moment, which is really important. Something which has been brought up a lot and something that people quite often like to talk about is the fact that the dairy beef heifers generally are taking long to finish and have lower carcass weights compared to the males. And there's also been talk about how sometimes the dairy cross beef calves are just not hitting the same weights that you'd expect for suppler calves, and that can impact on processing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So in summary, we've got some really great achievements, but there's still more to do. There's potential that can be optimized here. And the markets are really good at the moment. We've had an amazing year for prices, but they are unpredictable. And it's not been the easiest year weather-wise, but I think prices have helped. And I'm really keen on everyone thinking about making hay while the sun shines and investing while we can for tougher times ahead. And then lastly, that reputation is key. So this all started with the industry coming together because of concern about consumers and what they thought of the industry. And that is something that we need to work really hard to protect. So thinking about all those challenges, the group came back together in 2024, invited various other people along and held a number of meetings. And they decided to have this continued focus on calf welfare and reputation, but really focusing that within a sustainable supply chain. Data and evidence came up again and again. It was noted that they were so important to allowing that sustainable supply chain to function. And from these meetings, it became clear that AHDB, NFU and Innovation for Agriculture were in a place to lead some of these conversations. And then really distilling down how these challenges were going to be faced, the groups decided to look at breeding decisions, calf rearing and routes to market. So I will cover all of these as we go through. So we've got the GB calf strategy, 2025 to 2030. We've got these three groups. So right calf focused on the breeding, right start looking at calf rearing management, and right root looking at the supply chain. And the strategy is aimed at stakeholders across the supply chain. So we're really asking industry to do the heavy lifting here so that the impacts on farmers are minimized and there are tools available for you to make changes rather than you feeling like you have to do this all on your own. And the overall objective there is to rear every calf with care and purpose. So I'll start with right calf, right at the beginning, all about the different breeding decisions. So the idea is that we can provide information for farmers so that these calves have got purpose, whether that's in the beef industry or the dairy industry. So the sort of what we want to happen from this is that farmers get rewarded for making those good decisions because those calves have purpose, and therefore they'll have good welfare outcomes. So the first action that the group came up with is to create a template for an informed breeding checklist. So that's really emphasising to farmers, encouraging the dairy farmers to use sex semen on that top tier of the herd and then beef semen on the rest, but making a really conscious decision on that beef sire use. So at present, it's sort of generally understood that within the industry, some farmers are just picking whatever easy calving bull they can, and that can lead to these very small calves coming through for the processors. So it's really fantastic. Something that I learned through the strategy is the real advances in genetics and how there are sires now who you don't have to make a choice. They've got really good ease of calving, really good gestation lengths, but also great carcass characteristics as well. And this second action really leads on to that. So we know that those sires exist, but it's the information about them is not easily accessible. The breeding companies have done great work in they know which sires fit those templates, but not every farmer is buying direct from a breeding company. So the idea is to make a national register of beef sires where those traits are laid out. And then the next action here is to ensure that purposeful breeding decisions are rewarded. We need to know which sire has been used on the calf so that when it comes through processing, calves which have performed really well, we can track those genetics and feed that back to the farmer. So at the moment, less than 50% of dairy cross beef calves have their sire reported. So it has increased a lot since 2010. There was about 17% of sires being reported, but there's still a lot of work to do there. And we know that a lot of dairy farmers are using mixed semen. So genomic testing is something the group wants to investigate because that then gives us the power to know the genomic potential of every calf. And again, allow that feedback loop. So if a calf has performed really well through processing, the dairy farmer knows which sire or which group has done well, and they can make that decision again and get rewarded for it. So that brings us on to the second part of the strategy, right start, which is all about that consistent delivery of best practice care for those calves, that really critical time in life for them. The overall objective is that support during that early period. We know that it has a really big impact on their welfare and their future performance. So their productivity is impacted by what happens in those first 12 weeks. Antibiotic use is a bit of a hot topic at the moment. We know that there are improvements that can be made in this space, but we want to help farmers get there because it is a challenge. So the actions that are part of this strategy are standard operating procedure templates, some training and qualifications, and peer learning. And I'll go into a bit of detail for each of these. And this part of the strategy is being led by Innovation for Agriculture. And as I mentioned, they actually formed that calf action network. So that group of academics, vets, and farmers has been fundamental in designing this part of the strategy. So the standard operating procedure templates, the idea behind them is that they're customizable to the farm. So we don't want to go out and say, every farmer must feed X amount of colostrum, every farmer must do this in X time. We know that that's not realistic, and it would just fail. So the idea is that we provide templates on best practice, but they're customizable to the farm. And as part of that, there's so much information out there about calf rearing. It can really be quite overwhelming, particularly with different feed companies or trade bodies and farm supply shops selling many different products and giving different advice for those products. It can make it a bit confusing to decide what to do. So part of the action is to really filter out what is crucial, what is key, and get some evidence-based information installed in a place that's accessible for everyone. We know that peer learning is really crucial. It's often what you hear from your neighbour that works well is something that you might take on yourself. And it also provides support for people. So if you know that other people are going through the same problems you are, you can support each other and learn together. And then this part of the strategy is also looking at incentives and recognition. This isn't something that is set in stone. This strategy is, we've launched it, but it's not, we can't guarantee that everything's going to happen, but we're very keen on investigating how to get rewards to farmers for making these good decisions. So the next action here is around professionalising calf rearing. So a key aim here is to develop a qualification pathway. So that doesn't necessarily mean straight to university, but that is something the group is looking at. It's really looking at, can we deliver on-farm training, and can we deliver online training? So things that are really accessible for calf rearers. And then if they're interested in those, then there can be steps onwards with diplomas and certificates and the like, and that these qualifications are recognised. And there's been a discussion with this group in something like a register, like there is for foot trimmers, where people get recognised for the value that they're providing with the training that they've had. And the third action for the Right Start group is really looking at TB testing. So this is a big ambition, but we know from the previous dairy calf strategy that the subgroup that focused on TB policy was really successful. They got really good links with government, and they're keen to look at reducing the taking away the restrictions on testing for calves. So obviously at the moment, calves are exempt from testing up to 41 days. But this is not the best time of life for a calf. If you want them to leave farm before this time to avoid testing them, it's actually, they haven't been weaned yet, most likely, and it can have a big impact on them moving off farm at this time. So if we can shift that to under 90 days, it will allow farms to keep them in one place, get them through weaning, and then they're strong with a good immune system and ready to move on. And of course, this would be very much taken into account with DEFRA and APHA, looking at the risks, but we believe that there is a case to at least look at this. And then lastly, we've got the right route part of the strategy, which is all about having a fair, reputable and transparent supply chain to enable productive, profitable and sustainable farm businesses. And let me tell you that every single word of this strategy has been agonised over, and we really mean this. So we want farms to be successful and sustainable. There's three areas that we are focusing on with the right route. So more on TB policy, some about data, and then also promoting British beef and dairy. So starting with TB, the idea is to improve accessibility to isolation units by delinking them based on the TB risk. So delinking the source farm from the isolation unit so that there doesn't need to be as much testing between one and the other, and allowing the isolation units to take cattle from multiple farms instead of just one. And then also looking at opportunities for improved finishing units. So we know that there used to be access to grazing AFUs, and that's been taken away due to perceived risks. But the group believes that actually, if we could have a look at the data again and especially if we take into account regional localized areas with wildlife risks, it could be possible to have grazing with some AFUs, and this would be really beneficial for those native type bred calves and those that really benefit from period of time grazing, and as well for consumers who value that grass-fed beef label. The next action here is looking at sharing data. So I'm really passionate about this one. I think it could provide so many benefits. So the group wants to develop transparent and integrated traceability systems with key performance indicators. For example, like we said, the sire of the calf or the genomic testing results there, their growth rates, whether they've had any vaccines, if they've had BBD testing, for example, and then all the way through to their carcass classification. And the idea is that this would be done in a way which is doesn't expose any farmer, like the information is confidential, but available for the person buying that calf or interested in buying that calf at the discretion of the seller. And that would mean that calf rearers, when they buy a calf off farm, would know the health status and the sire, and then the finishers would know how the rearing period had gone. And then, as I said right at the beginning, the processors can feed back all the way down the supply chain how that animal has performed overall, and allowing that feedback loop of people to know what worked and to do it again. And also in here, we've got aligning with the dairy roadmap and the beef and lamb environmental roadmaps. So sustainability is really, really key, not just for consumers, but because we know it's really important for all of us and for our farms. So we will be working with our colleagues who are running those projects to make sure that we align there. And then the last goal here is about promoting British beef and dairy. So part of this is supporting the local abattoir network, meaning that there's greater access to processing facilities, and meaning that calves don't have to go, young stock and finished cattle don't have to go on such long journeys, and protecting their welfare. We want to make sure that British beef and dairy is protected from trade deals, which really making sure that we're promoting British beef and dairy and not undermining it. And finally, looking at the farm assurance review scheme. So, farm assurance review, so that the schemes involved take on board what that review found, so that audits actually provide value and are less of a headache and worth doing, because we know that consumers really value them. So it's making it worth doing for all of you. So that is all of the actions in a fair bit of detail, but if you wanted to see any more, we've actually got a website with a bit more background and some statistics. That QR code will take you there as well. And there's a downloadable leaflet which just sums it all up. And the idea of this is that if you so wished, you could print it out and have it as a poster, possibly in markets or vets offices or the like. So we are really grateful that before the strategy launched, we'd recruited 35 signatories. These are organisations and individuals who believe in the strategy and want to support it through the work that they're doing, and are also keen to contribute to the delivery of the actions. So just I'll make a call out for signatories at the end, but we are still recruiting for signatories. We're really keen for anyone who's interested to sign up and support the strategy. So bringing it back to what's in it for you specifically, I'll give it a little bit of a beef focus. That right calf part of the strategy is about ensuring that calves grow well, hit their targets, and create a consistent product. The right start part of the strategy, we're hoping will provide you with support from peer networks, evidence-based information, access to recognised training, and of course, healthy, thriving calves. And finally, the right route, we're aiming to increase access to biosecure markets, even in the event of TB outbreaks, making sure that data is available so that you can see the value of the animals in front of you and get that feedback all the way back through, and that value can just keep increasing. access to local abattoirs, a strong domestic market, and confidence in a truly sustainable supply chain, both environmentally and financially. So the next steps are, we've got this overarching working group which is going to track progress over the strategy for the next 5 years. We've got our 3 subgroups. So the signatories that have signed up and any further signatories that sign up are given the opportunity to say what they're interested in and what they can help to deliver. And they'll be having regular meetings to really make sure that we can hit those actions and get them delivered. And the groups are currently planning meetings. And then we're also hoping to provide newsletter updates as the strategy progresses. So if you are interested, we'd be delighted if you'd like to join as a signatory. You can join as an individual or a business. If you go to the website and click on the signatory page, it will show you this big button here. But the shortcut is to just email runanhw@ahdb.org.uk. And if you've got any questions, you can also send them there. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Cecilion. We have one question in the chat so far from Amanda. Amanda, do you want to unmute and ask your question yourself?
Yeah, I'm getting there. It's just that we got picked up by DEFRA recently. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
We got picked up about a calf that we'd sent to Truro Market in Cornwall at 42 days of age, and when I checked our market entry form, it does say calves over 42 days need to be tested. I sent them the form. I haven't heard anything since. I notice on the calf strategy poster it says that you're looking to take action to increase the exemption from 42 days to 90, but the exemption is for 41 days. Like, as you said, you actually said 41 days, but I think everybody thinks 42 days. We obviously got caught out. It doesn't seem to have had any consequences yet, but it could do. And I just think it's quite widely mistaken, the wording of it.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I received your query from a colleague. I believe that you spoke to our bureau earlier today. So what I've done is I've reached out to my colleague Sarah Tomlinson, and we're happy to pick up with you individually. But just to highlight, I'm really sorry about that misunderstanding. The GB calf strategy has a TB subgroup, and they created the wording for the leaflet. So all of them are TB experts, and you're the first person to pick this up. So thank you. I'll just confirm with Sarah as to exactly what messaging we need to get out there. And if we need to make an amendment, then we will. I know it is a bit of a confusing area, but yes, thank you for flagging that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. Linda.
Hello, Kate. It's William here, not Linda.
Oh, hi, William.
I'm good, Kate. I'm good. I'd just like to ask, what's your opinion on the IBR and stuff, vaccinating calves? Does she recommend it or no?
Oh, I'm afraid that that I can't quite speak to an individual situation. I would recommend talking to your own vet about the benefits and risks for your particular farm, but more broadly, vaccination for pneumonia and bovine respiratory disease is, in my opinion, a very positive thing. But definitely get advice for your own situation from your own vet.
Well, your members on the calf strategy, what diseases do you vaccinate against?
Sorry, do you mind just repeating the question?
The people that's on the calf strategy, and the farmers that's on it, do you have you used a standard to say that you have to recommend you have to vaccinate for IBR, Salmonella, leptospirosis? Have you to do that to be on your system? No,
so this is very much a this is an industry strategy. We're not asking farmers don't sort of sign up to produce farms for this strategy. It's purely a industry strategy, just trying to drive forward progress. We won't be recommending sort of individually tailored strategies for farms, but we will be providing advice about vaccination as part of those standard operating procedures we're hoping to develop.
And what's your opinion on IBR for young bulls going forward, bull calves?
Again, I would just say that it very much is individual farm by farm basis, and something to pick up with a vet near you if possible.
That's okay, thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Has anybody else got any other questions? Louise, which is also probably Rob.
Yeah, hiya. Can you hear me?
Hiya. Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, I was just concerned about you pushing for grazing AFUs, as I'm in a Gloucestershire, which is a strong TB area, and we've gotten through the cold and all that. That just worries me to death, because I just don't see the logic behind it. I think the gain is massively outweighed by the negativity of spreading TB back into the wildlife. It just seems an absolute no-brainer to knock that straight on the head.
Sure. So the idea of the strategy is to sort of begin the conversations and take into account everyone's feedback, and absolutely whatever is decided will be done on a risk basis. So there was a study undertaken by APHA, I think, which got a lot of data, and the group want them to reanalyze that data and take into account whether young stock provide a lower risk than adult cattle, and also very much having localized wildlife risk assessments in place. But this is not something which is guaranteed to happen, and definitely would not happen without extensive risk assessments and the agreement of APHA and DEFRA, who are understandably, like yourself, very cautious about this. It's just something which there's a feeling that it would increase accessibility for calves and reduce some of those barriers, but it's got to be done in the right way, and we're very aware of that.
Yeah, because I think you'll end up like I would be like, I would say you would be one of the people pushing from a farmer point of view, and I'm not sure how many farmers would be pushing for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's been brought forward through the Right Route working group, who will have consulted with farmers, and that group is sort of chaired by the NFU. So it's come from farmers and industry, but absolutely, I'll sort of feedback your feelings there, and I think, you know, nothing's going to happen without extensive risk assessment and analysis.
But I don't want to bang on about it, but it's like, it's almost like dairy farmers would be desperately keen to get rid of their calves because they don't want them on site, whereas suckler producers, you know, if you're in an area and your next door neighbour then goes and has a load of calves brought in from a you know, TB herd, you're going to be right teed off, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I understand your concern. And as I mentioned to Katie earlier, so Sarah Tomlinson's my boss, and she's TB expert, and she's very happy to come in and do a talk about the TB areas of the strategy, if you guys are interested.
And just as a the other end of the scale, one of my biggest bugbears, I got a suckler herd. I don't mind testing my calves at 42 days old. It would obviously be better if it was 90 days, but I would much happier not test cattle that were 60 days from slaughter. That's the biggest, you know, with damaged carcasses, you know, animals get flighty. If I could sign a piece of paper and say, look, these cattle will be gone in 60 days, that would be more of an issue for me as a welfare point of view than handling calves at 42 to 90 days. That's just
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Thank you. Yeah, I'll feed that back to the group.
Thank you.
Can people just pop in the chat if you would be interested in having a webinar on TB and further details, obviously, of the strategy on TB, then just pop in the chat yes or no, and then obviously, depending on what people say, I will try and plan that for later in the year. Mike.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, further to the previous guy that was speaking, our next door neighbour is actually taking young calves with the Morrison scheme that I think have come through Butalar. They've come out of the middle of Shropshire. Yes, they've been tested, but they are young calves that are coming out of a TB1 area. We're in a TB4 here. And myself and other farmers in the area are extremely concerned about it. I understand that they can do that, but it's a very risky strategy. And I certainly would be very much against or very nervous about grazing AFUs. It's basically the same sort of system as our next door neighbours employing at the moment. The risks are absolutely huge in an area such as ours, where we're very fortunate to be in TB4. So that's comment about that. You mentioned before about the beef, and the beef out of dairy hecklers weren't performing anywhere near as well as the bulls, which you'd sort of expect. Were they reared on the same system, or have they sort of put a grazing system together which would be more suitable for them, to get you a better comparison as to how they're performing?
I believe this is like for like comparison of the same system, but yeah, part of the idea behind the grazing AFUs, if we put that aside, allowing for development of slower growing calves is very much part of this, but also the genetics play such a big role in this. And one of my colleagues who is in the genetics team actually did an analysis of, if you take a small statured dairy cow and put a beef sire on her, what is the likelihood that her calf would or wouldn't reach sort of specification? And actually what she found was that 90% of the calves from these small statured cows do meet specification. So although it's a real headache for processors, it's perhaps not a big a problem as it's perceived to be. And equally, we're hoping that with this strategy and the advances in genetics, and also ideally, you know, raising the health and growth of calves, we'll get those advances anyway, and we'll get more calves reaching spec.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Has anybody else got any other questions? I see Rob has answered in the chat, but if anybody else can answer in the chat, just to let me know your thoughts on a TB meeting, that would be great. Otherwise, I can send something round to get everyone's thoughts on that. But if there's if anyone's questions or hands go up, then I will obviously ask those in a second. But if there aren't any other questions, then thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening, especially we always get a question like that. Paul, do you want me to ask it for you? Oh no, that's about TB. Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, it is about TB rather than a question for this evening. So yeah, I will have a look at those and everybody else's comments later on to decide whether we arrange that for later on. But thank you very much for sharing the GB calf strategy with us this evening. I will, I've got the presentation, and so I can grab the links out of there, and I will send everybody, along with the recording, I will pull out the links and send those out to everybody so that you can easily click through to those various resources that Hasilion was telling us about, so that you haven't got to go and try and find them or type all of those things in. So I will pop that in an email to you probably tomorrow with the recording, and hopefully you can have a little bit more of your evening back and go and enjoy the rest of the evening. Next week we have got an update on AVP's sustainability with the prize draw spin from everybody that was involved in Prism. So if you haven't let me know that you want to be included in that email, then I will send you the link out, as long as obviously I know that you want to be involved in that meeting. So let me know if you haven't already. But thank you very much for your time this evening, and we'll hopefully see you next week. Thanks, guys. And thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.